Hello everyone, welcome to Keen Ear. Now that was footage from a recent pilgrimage. I went on to a record fair, the first record fair actually in quite some time. Not entirely sure how long, but I suspect something like 3 years, maybe even longer. So it's good to be back really. And as I've shown the footage, let's take a look at the couple of records I managed to pick up. And it is only two, and I have to say neither of them are particularly rare or exciting or anything like that, unfortunately, this time. Well, that's the thing with record fairs is that don't assume that they are purely for the rare records and the grails and that kind of thing. Yeah, they are pretty good for that, but if anything, they're even better for the common records, the common records that you'll see kind of every day, and that kind of thing, any record shop anywhere kind of in the world almost. Because generally you find that they're a little bit cheaper than record shops, and you also will find that you get more choice as well instead of finding one or maybe two copies of a record. If you're lucky, really, you find like five or six copies, or maybe even more. I was flicking through the rack and I was seeing the same records kind of over and over again. So yeah, you can really take your pick and find the best one in the best condition at the cheapest price. So yeah, pretty good for the common records. So let's take a look at the first LP I'm going to be showing, the first record I picked up at this record fair, and it's Wings at the Speed of Sound, a very, very common record, one of the most easily attainable Beatles related albums out there, really. This isn't the first time I've owned this record, it's actually not the second either, it's the third time I've managed to get my hands on this album. The other two were a bit rough, so this is like the final copy, really, of this record. Now, I actually forgot for quite a long time, actually, that I didn't have a copy of this album. I sort of forgot that I didn't own it really, and I was keen to kind of get my hands on it once again and sort of reassess it. See how it stacks up and see if my opinions changed on it or anything like that. Also, as well, I am still planning on making that solo Beatles, post Beatles breakup, whatever you want to call it, sort of ranking video. And I definitely wanted to include this album in that video because I think it deserves to be there. Really, it's not it's not a very important album just generally. Well, I think it's too important, so it's too kind of integral really to just completely disregard and not even include. So yeah, I did want to include it for that video. So yeah, I am still working on that. There's still quite a number of particularly George Harrison records I want to get my hands on. And once again, at this record fair, I had no luck whatsoever with George Harrison records. The only ones I found really, I already own. So I maybe have to really do go on eBay and just bite the bullet and just pick up a load of George records on eBay because I'm just not finding them at all wherever I go. And that's been the case for some time now. But anyway, yeah, just at the speed of sound, a pretty decent, Wings album on balance, really. I don't think it's the worst. I don't necessarily think it's the best either. I don't want to give too much away, obviously, but I think I share a similar opinion of this album that most other people have. Quite honestly, I don't think it's one of the best. I don't think it's necessarily one of the worst either. There's the inner sleeve that comes with it. And one of the things about this record, because I have owned three copies of it now, I do know, is that when it's a UK copy anyway, if it's got cut corners, chances are it's an original. The 80s, this got reissued and it came with like rounded edges, and that's one of the things. For whatever reason, it's stuck in my head, and I can't seem to get it out. So it's a little bit of useless information that's floating around in my brain. And now, thanks to me saying that, it's floating around in yours as well. But anyway, this is the record. It's got I believe the label was designed by Linda McCartney for this one, and it's the pretty much the same label that every single copy or every version, should I say, of the album pretty much comes with, and rightly so. If Linda McCartney designs, the label, why not use it for every issue? But that's Wings at the Speed of Sound. Anyway, we'll move on now to a pretty much equally common everyday record. Really, this is the Rolling Stones' "Emotional Rescue," and this is a record I always associate with car boot sales and that kind of thing. It's a very car booty sort of record, really. It's something, these flea markets and that kind of thing. It just has that feel about it. It's sort of such a common record that I've passed up so many times. Very insignificant record, really, on balance, but it's a pretty significant album for me personally because this is the final Rolling Stones album I kind of needed for my collection. So I've got all the Stones albums effectively at this point. I've got all the studio albums. So yeah, it was kind of good to kind of finally get my hands on this. And I went for the vinyl version because this album comes with a poster, and I wanted to get my hands on, because I'm a sucker for posters. So if it comes with a poster, I want the vinyl version and the poster that comes with it. And that's a pretty ominous, you know, it's almost like anti-Santa, the evil Santa Claus there. So yeah, it's a pretty big poster. I'm not going to open her out. Yeah, it's pretty spectacular, although not a brilliant poster. It's sort of, it's more striking than it is anything else, shall we say. Where's the label? Typical yellow and black label. This is a Canadian press. One of the things about the American versions of quite a lot of, particularly 70s Stones albums, I believe, is that they sound pretty good. They're arguably the best version, the American original presses. So I wonder how they compare to the Canadian presses. Well, this is actually quite a good sounding record. So yeah, I think they stack up pretty well, at least from this example anyway. So yeah, I've got all the Rolling Stones albums now. Yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. I'll be able to make the ranking video pretty soon. But although I haven't said that, I am struggling with it, quite honestly. It's not as straightforward as I was first anticipating. But I'll get there in the end, I'm pretty sure. I've only listened to Emotional Rescue all the way through once, so I don't have a particularly strong opinion of it. But first impressions, quite honestly, are pretty good. I think it's pretty decent. So better than I anticipated, because it's not an album that's fairly well regarded, shall we say. So I'll move on now to some other bits and pieces that I picked up outside of the record fair, and this is something I picked up actually just yesterday. It's a 45 from Andy McKay, and it's from 1974. And in that year, he released a solo album. I guess the Roxy Music had a bit of time, to disband and do a bit of solo work if they felt like it. And yeah, Andy came up with this, and he released an album called, I believe it's called In Search of Eddie Riff. I've got it down here on my phone. Yeah, In Search of Eddie Riff, and it's his first sort of solo album he made outside of Roxy Music, and it has on it a track called Ride of the Valkyries. It's the Wagner track, which he's kind of given this sort of almost surf music sort of element to. That's what it sounds like to me anyway. Very surfy sort of. If you could imagine such a thing, it's pretty interesting actually. It's worth checking out. I've never heard it before. And another track is a non-album track. It's called Time Regained, and it's a Brian Eno collaboration. And that's what kind of drew me in. Being a pretty big Eno fan. And the thing is with this particular track is that it didn't appear on the original album. This is what I found out recently. It didn't appear on In Search of Eddie Riff, which I'm tempted to pick up. And honestly, I don't actually own a copy of that album. But it's a track that wasn't included on the original version, but it got reissued later on in the 70s with a different track listing. So it's not technically a reissue, I suppose. It's got different songs, different music on it. And one of the tracks included is Time Regained, or it's not the full version, it's like a shortened version. So this is like a unique track that didn't appear on the original album and didn't appear on the later album either. So it's a bit confusing, and honestly, I'm not too sure what they were thinking of. But anyway, it's a pretty obscure Eno track. And I saw that, and it's actually been in the record. I picked up in a record shop in Chester, and it's been there for some time. I kind of felt a bit sorry for it, really. It's been in there for years, and I thought, what the hell, I'm gonna buy, because I remember looking at it like 4 years ago or whatever, looking through the Roxy Music 45s, and I thought, you know what, you'll come with me this time. So yeah, I picked that up. So that's what I picked up yesterday. Go back further now to some stuff I picked up quite a while now. I've had sort of waiting to be shown for quite a while now. and it's Roxy Music. This is pure Roxy Music. It's not Roxy Music related. It is a Roxy Music release. This is live at the Apollo. And at first, when I saw this secondhand in a shop in Liverpool, and I thought it may be like a 1980s, something from the early 80s, something like that. It was actually from 2001, I believe, 2001, 2002, something like that. And in that, around that time, Roxy Music embarked on a tour, a reunion tour, I suppose. Managed to get Paul Thompson on drums, which is fantastic to see. They got Andy McKay, of course, on horns, and Phil Manzanera on guitar, and Brian Ferry, of course, on lead vocal. Unfortunately, no Brian Eno, so it was almost a complete reunion, but not, close but no cigar. And yeah, this is a fantastic live concert DVD. If you can kind of check, I'm not too sure if it's on YouTube. It's worth checking out. I haven't checked in all honesty, but if it's not and you're curious, I think it's well worth tracking down a copy. And if you're into Roxy music, well worth watching. It's got a great support from other musicians, support musicians on stage, and a great track listing as well. Remake, remodel, Street Life, Ladytron, Dance Away, Jealous Guy, Mother of Pearls on here, both ends burning. In every dream home a heartache, for your pleasure, do the strand. So we get really good stuff on here. Really good, it goes through all the history of Roxy music. Some of the deeper tracks, some of the lesser known tracks, some of the more well known, the singles and that kind of thing. So yeah, really, really good. Highly, highly recommend. The only sad thing about this, really, besides the lack of Brian Eno, is there's the special features where they're talking to Brian Ferry about he's being interviewed and he's asked what's next for Roxy Music, and at this point in time they hadn't really done anything together in about 20 years. He says, well, we'll have to wait and see, as a joke, what we're going to do, in the next 20 years. And unfortunately, that joke turned out to be the case because I believe they haven't, to my knowledge anyway, they haven't really done anything together in 20 years, since 2001, 2002, around that time. So yeah, will we ever see a reunion of such as this of Roxy Music? I kind of hope so. Hopefully with Eno, although I think that's highly, highly unlikely. But you never know, it is possible. For as long as it's possible, I hold on to a degree of hope that it will happen, even though I think it's very, very unlikely it will. And the thing is with Roxy Music as well, it's always worth bearing in mind that all the members are still alive, which is pretty, at this point anyway, all the members are thankfully still alive. For a group that goes back to the early 1970s, there's not many significant groups that go back as far as that, where, in terms of the classic lineup anyway, I'm not talking about every member that Roxy Music has ever had. I'm just talking about the classic lineup. They're all still going. So yeah, it's still a possibility. Although the flip side of that, they are still alive, but they're all pretty old now. That's the downer really. So we'll move on now to a Blu-ray. This is from Prince, Sign of the Times. Fantastic, film really. Is regarded as a motion picture. It was a film that Prince directed, basically as a theatrical release, with riding on the success that Purple Rain had. And this is a fantastic sort of showcase really of Prince's talent, on stage and talent in general. This is a fantastic, truly fantastic, experience really. And it comes highly, highly recommend. Never seen it before, and if you're trying to get into Prince, this is something that you need to kind of see. And I think this is the best film really that the Prince was ever really involved with. I think it's better than Purple Rain, which I do like. I do like Purple Rain, but I think this is a better showcase of his talent really. His dancing and his multi instrumental, talent and his singing and everything is just really comes, on full force with this. And it's great. The only downside to this release is it's very bare bones. It's just the film and nothing else. And yeah, I picked this up again secondhand in a shop in Liverpool, and I was kind of hoping for a bit more on it, really. Just a bit more information, just like a 10-minute video, talking about it. The only special feature it has are these cards that come inside the case, which I'll kind of go through now. And yeah, it would have been nice if they did, because I'm not, apparently this was sort of, some of it was recorded in front of a studio, studio audience, and some of it wasn't, and that kind of thing, it's sort of, it would have been nice if they would maybe explain it, because I don't really know too much about it in all honesty. It's something I could do with reading up on or educating myself on. But, it would have been nice if the DVD, or the Blu-ray should I say, came with that rather than nothing. But it is what it is, and it looks great, obviously, with it being Blu-ray, and sounds great. So yeah, well worth checking out if you haven't done so already, although I suspect many people have. So that's all I'm going to be sharing for this segment. We're going to cut now to none other than Roger Taylor, of course, the drummer from Queen. Okay, so that was Roger Taylor there. I went to see him live quite recently, actually, a few days ago now. And yeah, it was great. It was great to see Roger. Never seen any of the members of Queen perform before, and it was a real treat. And it was great to see him perform an unusual track such as that, Led Zeppelin track. And I was, as I was watching, I was thinking how great it would have been back in the 1970s to see Led Zeppelin and Queen perform together, to share an evening's worth of music, if anything, and kind of, Queen perform Led Zeppelin tracks and vice versa. I think that would have been fantastic. Anyway, enough of that. Let's take a look at some more bits and pieces we've got for the final segment of this video. I'm going to start off with a CD, Rolling Stones yet again, and this is Steel Wheels, another step towards completing that Rolling Stones. I was kind of keen on just kind of getting to the end, so I picked this up on CD on eBay. They're cheap. Part of the reason I picked her up on CD is that I'm not a particularly big fan of the cover. I don't really need a 12-inch version of this cover, really, quite frankly. Also, as well, with this album, I do believe it's a pretty long album, and if anyone's watching this video, could you let me know in the comments how this album is on vinyl? Because I don't believe it is a double LP. So how did they get all the music on it? Did they just cram it all on and hope for the best, or did they edit it down? Either way, I'd kind of prefer to get it on CD, in all honesty, if either of those are the case, because it seems like it's an album that's definitely more designed for a CD release than it is a vinyl release. So that's mainly the reason why I picked her up on CD, and because it is so cheap as well. So that's Steel Wheels, and yeah, I'm not going to give too much away what I think about it. I've listened to it a few more times than Emotional Rescue, but still haven't formed a full opinion of it yet. But it's pretty good, if unremarkable, Rolling Stones album. So we'll move on now to another Rolling Stones album. Very Stones heavy video. You can kind of see I was kind of very keen on getting to the end of the Stones collecting, really, in terms of the studio albums anyway. And this is A Bigger Bang, one of their more recent albums. When did this one come out? 2005. And Yeah, I definitely wanted to check this out. I was kind of curious, they really, record an album from more modern, times, because they didn't really release that many albums in the 90s, it was kind of few and far between. And this is really their most recent album that is, their own material. So yeah, I was kind of curious to see how it shapes up and that kind of thing. And one thing about it I really really don't like, I can tell you now, is check out the writing of that. That this is the the text at the back. They got the track list in there, and it's tiny. My vision is actually really quite good. I wouldn't say it's better than most people, but it's pretty good. And I really struggle to read it. And when you consider that the average Rolling Stone fan is, let's face it, pretty old. If you've been a Rolling Stones fan since the '60s, you're pretty old at this point in time. And how any of them are expected to read that, I have no idea. But anyway, a fairly decent album, really. I am struggling to think of where I'm going to put all these albums, where they're all going to fit. So many of them have the same good things about them and almost the same bad things about them. So that's one of the reasons why I'm struggling to kind of sequence them and that kind of thing. But anyway, that's a bigger bang. I think that's safe to say it's not going to be top, shall we say, of my most favorite Rolling Stones albums. I haven't got really a huge amount to get through in this video. I've shown quite a lot, but it's actually been quite a while since my previous sort of collection update video. I'm actually kind of proud of that, really, to some extent. I haven't managed to really rein in and restrain my collecting to a certain extent, but I think I'd have a few more bits and pieces, partly due to the fact of I had to buy a new cartridge recently for my not a new cartridge, sorry, a stylus for my cartridge, and that kind of ate into a bit of the budget, really. In all honesty, I probably would have had a few extra records to show and a few maybe CDs and that kind of thing, but because of that, it's the downside of collecting vinyl, and if you want to play your records, you need cartridges and styluses and that. And the fact is, mine had worn out. I'd had it for years. So, yeah. But anyway, let's take a look now. Two records, and we'll wrap this video up. Both of them are, I have to warn people, anyone watching this video, if you have a sensitive disposition, you might want to stop watching this video because these two record covers are hyper macho to the extreme. First one is from Thin Lizzy, and it's called Fighting. And yeah, this is a record that I actually managed to get my hands on. There was actually a choice. There was a choice of copies out there in my local area in two different record shops. They had the same record. I believe it was the same pressing in roughly the same condition, as it turns out, anyway. Uh, but the one was about £15 more than the other, yeah, quite a bit more expensive. In the end, I went for this cheaper option. I think I made the right decision because this is in great shape, and it's, I believe, an original copy. And sometimes when I buy a cheaper copy of something, I kind of regret it, as time goes on, because it's a bit of a rough copy, and I wish I'd have gone for the more expensive, nicer copy. Not having to get a replacement and an upgrade and that. And it's sometimes it's just worth getting a better copy. But this is really great. It's a really great uh, copy of this record. A nice original. It seems like an original. I didn't look her up and I didn't check, but it seems like it's an original, and it's near mint. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. Original Vertigo UK press. Great cover. Very happy indeed. And this is actually a very good Thin Lizzy record as well. Thin Lizzy are a group that haven't really let me down at this point. They seem to be consistently impressive. I think part of the reason for that is, Phil's songwriting ability. I think is something that most groups generally just don't have. They don't have a good songwriter at the heart, and I think that's what you really need to keep going and to keep producing good music. And because they had him, he was like a driving force, and they were able to keep going, and not sort of go through the '70s really and into the '80s, and it was definitely a vital ingredient to keep them going. You need a good songwriter, because the fact is, there's loads of great singers out there, there's loads of great guitarists out there, loads of great drummers, or is there a great deal of great songwriters? There really isn't. Your songwriters are the rare aspect, the rare ingredient that you need, to make it really in music. So, and they had one. So anyway, we'll move on now to another Hyper Macho record album cover, and it's this time none other than Sylvester Stallone, and this is a soundtrack album to a film called Cobra from 1986. A film I'm actually quite familiar with. I've seen a few times. Very, very 80s, very 80s film, very 80s music to it, but in a good way. I do like the film and I do like the music. It's sort of a bit of a guilty pleasure, I suppose. And yeah, I found this copy, which is still in shrink, which isn't really doing it the best of sort of, it's not really a good thing necessarily about it, though it's still in shrink, because as you can see, it's kind of crushing it really, it's crushing the record. But I don't really want to take it off because I think this is an original copy, and it's what, over 30 years ago now. It's got this, it's got the shrink still on, so yeah, I feel a bit bad if I was to take it off. But it's an American press, I believe. It's got all the hype stickers and everything. So if it wasn't for that, it'd be a great copy. And I couldn't really resist it, with it being shrink. And it's a pretty decent soundtrack, really. And it's got this on it as well in the corner. It's got Liverpool, the 8th of the 7th, 1986. Mark Gallagher. So yeah, this is the original sleeve. So yeah, it really is shaping up to be, an original copy. I don't think it's a reissue or anything, and it's in great shape throughout. So pretty happy with it. And yeah, like I was saying, a good film. I like her anyway, and it's fairly good soundtrack. It's got a track called "Voice of America's Sons," which opens it, which is this really very very 80s like rock track with synthy overtones too. I think it's pretty good, pretty fun, and it's also got some stuff from Miami Sound Machine on this, which is pretty good. And it's got a track on here as well, Two into One, which is a Bill Medley and Carmen Twilly track, which is very very 80s, very 80s ballady, but is a track that I kind of like, I do, and it's a bit of a guilty pleasure. This guilty pleasure album, guilty pleasure film. So I think I'll do for this video. I think it's going to be a bit of an epic, and I paste all these bits and pieces together. So a lot of Rolling Stones, a little bit of Wings for the first time. I think it's the first Wings album I bought in a while. Bit of Roxy Music and all that, and a little bit of Queen as well thrown in. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you soon.